I don't see it yet, Michelle.
No. That 30 to 60 seconds or whatever it is always feels like.
It's on.
Okay. All right. So now let's see, I think we have, I haven't been paying attention to who's coming into the meeting, but I think we have 5 board members here. So we can start. Oh, and all right.
You're up to 6 now.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm going to start recording this meeting. It's also streaming. So we'll call the meeting to order. This is the Board of Education meeting of November 17th, 2020. This is a virtual meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and we ask that all participants mute themselves to prevent the meeting from getting a lot of interference, and that you, if you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself using *6. I also ask that everyone wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking so that people listening by phone are able to identify the person who is talking. This meeting is being held remotely tonight with access by phone or streaming as indicated on the agenda. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I need to share my screen. Let me see. And I had a flag. Oh, I'm sorry. This is taking me a minute. Can you see my flag? No. I don't know why I can't find it. Here we go. I'm sorry about that. All right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And then next we'll share our commitment to community, and this evening I'll ask Mr. Cruson if he would read our commitment.
As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Thank you. All right, so that, Dr. Rodriguez, so that'll bring us to our celebration of excellence. Did you have something before we get there?
Well, just that I had a text asking if the board was being streamed tonight, and it's they're saying it's not. So Janice, if you can just check that.
It's being streamed. I'm on the YouTube link as we're going right now, and I'm looking at it.
I can also see it.
Okay, I'll let them know. Okay.
I'll double check that the link is correct on the Board of Ed
Thank you.
agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have multiple celebrations this evening, and we could certainly use some good cheer and reasons to remind us why we're all here. So I want to begin the evening with our Newtown High School student, Cameron Powers. Cam did something extraordinary when she was granted a wish through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. She took the selfless route, as I call it, and bestowed that gift on the students at Newtown High School by creating a unified lounge at the school. And I have to tell you, I had the privilege of seeing that maybe just about a week ago, and I was truly blown away. It was something really out of a magazine. And I know Dr. Longabuco is actually in the room right now, and I know she wants to say a few words on Cam's behalf.
Absolutely. Thank you. Just a little bit of background on both on Cameron and also the Unified Lounge. When children are granted a wish through the Make-A-Wish organization, they have three options: to go, to have, or to give. Very rarely does anyone choose to give their wish, and Cameron did just that. She is a 4-year member of our Unified Sports, Best Buddies, and Tools for Living programs, and she feels strongly about making sure that all students are included. And so when she was granted a wish, she decided she would like a unified lounge for Newtown High School so that all students could enjoy together. And the rest was magical. Cameron worked with an interior designer and Newtown High School to find a space and make sure it was exactly what she wanted. On Friday, October 16th, the Make-A-Wish Foundation and Newtown High School held the grand opening and revealed the official unified lounge donated by Cameron Powers. Since then, our students have been enjoying the games, activities, technology, and music in the lounge. This past Saturday evening, Cameron's story was highlighted on the annual Wish Night event, which is the organization's largest fundraiser. Cameron has the biggest heart. She is a giver, and she wholeheartedly believes in inclusion. Newtown High School is so lucky to have Cameron as a student, and we will be forever grateful for her selfless act and this amazing room. Thank you, Cam.
Great job, Cam. And speaking of unified, again, the 2020 Unified Sports Team was recently recognized as a unified champion program. Newtown was chosen by Special Olympics from hundreds of schools nationwide that applied. Newtown's Unified Sports Program has a rich history dating back to 2014 when the program started, and was named a Unified Champion School in 2017, along with the Michaels Cup Top Unified Program in 2018. So I know, Matt, you want to say a few words on the Unified Sports Team?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Rodrigue. I would also like Coach Santoli, if you'd like to say something. I know Nora just came on as well, but our program really speaks volumes about the culture at that school and the way that our student athletes interact, both our athletes and our partners, and how well they work together, and just how special of a unified sports program we do have there. So I couldn't be more proud, not just being named this, but just being part of this program. And it was started, as you mentioned, in 2014. Kathy Davey began the program. Kirsten Tuz picked it up last year, and now Lou Santoli, who's our special ed teacher at the high school, is going to continue that program. So I want to thank him and our student athletes and our partners just for being who they are and making this program what it is. So congrats to all of you, and thanks to all of you.
And finally, excuse me, the 2020 boys soccer team recently completed an undefeated season at 13-0-1. They won the SWC North Division title. Many members of the team were a part of the 2019 boys soccer team, which earned the United Soccer Coaches All Academic Team Award. Newtown was one of 112 high school boys teams recognized out of 19,000 teams in America. That's just astounding to me. This award is given to teams for exemplary performance in the classroom during the 2019-20 academic year as well. To qualify for the award, the team must have a minimum grade point average of 3.25 for the entire academic year. Again, congratulations to all of you. And Matt, I'm sure you want to say a few words on the soccer team as well.
Yeah, I think I think that award there speaks volumes of the program. We had a brand new coaching staff this year. Last year, we were under the tutelage of Charlie Amblow, Justin Stevens, Chris O'Haron, who are a huge part of that success. And then moving this year, our new varsity head coach, Ryan Liddy, and assisted by Adam Beret and Steve Conway. And the culture of that program is exactly what we preach: students first, athletes second. So to be named that and to have that type of an academic award was fantastic. So we were just named that this fall, dating back to last year, and then you fast forward to this year, and to see what these guys accomplished on the field. They were one of 2 undefeated programs that we had at the high school in the fall. Our volleyball team was also undefeated as well. And just to watch these guys go out there and compete in July, none of us even knew if we would have a season. And they're out there, they got their masks on, they're doing all their drills 6 feet apart all summer. So from July 3rd to now it's November 17th, a phenomenal group of young men. And we have 15 seniors that were graduating, so a very large senior class. And again, that speaks to the program that's in place. So we have some of the captains, we have our captains who are on the Zoom. So congrats to all of you, because without your leadership, that would have never have happened. So thank you, guys.
Congratulations to all of you. We're so proud.
So it is so nice to have everybody here to celebrate this, and I just wish that we could all be in person. It is amazing that we have come, you know, if you think back to where we were in July, Mr. Memoli, that you speak of what our mindset was at that point, and it's just so good to be able to celebrate these things in November. So thank you all for being here, and it's just wonderful that you all are representing Newtown High School, and thank you so much. All right, now normally we would take a break and have some tea and cookies and talk with everybody, but we don't have the room to do that tonight, so we'll just continue with our meeting. You all are welcome to stick around for our meeting if you'd like, or log off as you so wish. So thank you all for coming this evening, and we'll move on with our agenda from here.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Michelle and Dr. Rodriguez, I just wanted to let you know that the link is correct on the agenda, and I checked it. It's all working.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Good to know. All right, so we will continue with our consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of November 4th, donations to Newtown High School, and the correspondence report.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there anybody to second that motion? Ms. Harriman?
Second.
Oh, who was that?
Second.
Mr. Voros seconds the motion. All right. Were there any things that needed to be removed? Ms. Harriman Stakes?
Can we remove the minutes of November 4th from the agenda because I need to recuse myself or abstain?
I forgot about that. Yep. So if there's no objection, we'll remove the minutes from November 4th and save that for later in the meeting. So given the rest that's on the consent agenda, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let's see, Ms. Zukowski, did oh, I see. Okay, so that's unanimous. The consent agenda passes unanimously. And that brings us to public participation. So I see we have a few phone numbers on the line. So during the first public participation, the board welcomes commentary regarding items on the agenda. After being recognized, if you would please state your name and address for the record. We request that speakers be respectful and limit their comments to not more than 3 minutes. The Board of Education does not discuss personnel items or student matters in public. And then during the second public participation, commentary may address the agenda or may introduce issues for the board to consider in the future. We don't engage in dialogue during either of the public comment periods. So if you have further questions, you can email the board. Is there anybody who'd like to address the board regarding agenda items at this time? All right. Oh, and you can, I know I muted a few people. You can unmute yourself using *6 if you'd like to speak. No, okay. So that'll move us to reports. And I'll start with the chair report. So I've had a couple of requests to try to decrease our meeting length. We've had rather lengthy meetings over the past couple months. And I've spoken with Nick Caruso at CABE about ways that we might be able to do that. But I think it's between Nick and I talking about the ways to do that. I think we're going to need some input from the board about priorities and how we'd like to do that. So I think what I'd like to do is schedule a virtual meeting in December with Nick Caruso. I know we missed our self-evaluation as a board, but this I think is something that's been coming up, and I'd like to invite Nick in for early December, and I'll send out some dates for board members to let me know if you're available. We also need to renew the committee assignments in December, and I'm hoping that'll we can just carry over what we're doing currently, unless I hear differently from folks. And I also want to reiterate at this time about the priority of keeping schools open, because I know we've had just today the report from the Connecticut state indicated that there were quite a few more cases in Newtown. And I just want to reiterate that if it is truly a priority to keep schools open, and I think it is for everybody here and likely those listening, then each person in Newtown is going to need to make personal decisions that reflect that. And it can't just be words that, you know, schools are a priority. That's easy to say, but we have to reflect that in our choices. And I'm just hoping that the community can, we've showed some great choices and been able to keep numbers down in the past, but I think it's going to have to carry over now is the important time. So in that light, I appreciate Dr. Rodriguez's letter that went out regarding the Thanksgiving break. The message was signed by the Western Connecticut superintendents, and the message from the group was just really powerful, and I appreciate the role that Dr. Rodriguez played in getting that out. So thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, for that. And that concludes my report. I don't know if there are any questions or comments. All right, sensing none, I will move on to Dr. Rodriguez and the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. First, I wanted to let you all know that the CIAC Board of Control took action this morning to postpone all winter sports to January 19th. This is obviously an ongoing consult with the State Department of Public Health and Governor Lamont's office. And I know Matt Memoli has already communicated with our parents and athletes as well. So I just wanted to update you on that. I mentioned a while back, we are planning to work with Recenter in Hartford, who will be supporting us with PEAK, a diversity and equity subgroup, as well as looking at how we shape the role of the diversity compliance coordinator if approved. They have worked with many, many districts and organizations throughout Connecticut and have an outstanding reputation in this field. I love their vision. If you go to their webpage and learn more about them, we envision, as they say, an equitable and just world where all youth have what they need to grow and thrive. We envision empowered students supported by conscious, critically thinking adults and supportive and safe schools and communities. And they work toward a world in which equity is institutionalized in all school systems. So that certainly is in alignment with our own commitments that we've made. So I'm really looking forward to working with them. We're looking at a cost of around, if you look at all of the costs, and they can do much with us for a year, it's approximately $25,000. But this includes training, working with peak committee, consultation, helping in the establishment and hiring of our diversity coordinator. And right now, the cost would be able to be funded from our professional development and training funds. So we are really looking forward to working with them. They were going to be with us tomorrow at our administrative team, but they will come to our next meeting, and I hope to have you meet them as a board as well. I do have, and thank you, Dr. Koo, for what you said about the community, and I know they've worked really hard up until now. That's why we've had such a good run thus far at the school, despite the rise in cases. But I'll hold off on that until we get to the COVID update in the agenda. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Do we have any questions or comments on the superintendent's report? I'll just ask a question about the winter sports. Do you know if is there anything being done about, and I don't know what we call it, like recreational sports or the sports that happen outside of the high schools that many of our students participate in? And I know sometimes, I know there have been discussions about, whether those sports are going across state lines and how that's working. Do you know was that mentioned at all?
Not with this. Are you talking about the youth sports or yeah. The towns really work. I mean, they really do follow, I think, a lot of what's happening with CIAC and public schools. But again, they have the ability to work outside of that. So they don't really fall under those guidelines or criteria. And I honestly can't answer that because I haven't really spoken to them at least for a week. So now that this news came out, I imagine they're going to be looking at their sports as well.
Okay.
I can't imagine they would do something different, but.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right. So that brings us to our committee reports. We had policy. Ms. Herman-Stites, did you want to?
Sure, I can give a quick update. We continue discussion on the mask wearing policy, which is in front of you for the second read this evening. We also continue discussion on our nepotism policy. Dr. Koo joined us for that discussion as we had one of our committee members that had to recuse themselves from that conversation. So that's an ongoing discussion and hopefully will be wrapped up at our next meeting. And then we continue to go through our personnel policies with Suzanne Dramo. So that's it, but I'm looking forward to the discussion on the masking policy later on in the meeting.
All right, thank you. And I think we had curriculum and instruction. Mr. Boros, did you want to speak to that?
Yes. Yes. During the course of the evening, you'll be hearing from Kathy Swift as she gives you a presentation of women's studies and world lit. So I will not go into that now and let her present that to you. Mrs. Uberti discussed with us this very successful professional development day, and I would like to highlight for you her comment when she shared that she believed we struck the right balance with this first rollout, which is getting people to think about and reflect on their own beliefs of where you are with yourself. Very key. Paraeducators have been trained in the middle school and high school, and due to some changes in schedule, the K-6 para training has not yet happened, and it's in the process of those paras being given a school-based device so that they can contribute like the others in their presentation. The NWEA has been underway, and I believe is probably completed by now in grades 1 through 8. There has been a plan developed to bring full remote learners into school, or in the case of Reed, into the community center, so that they can be tested on site under the direction of a certified teacher. Key that this is done because it offers the greatest opportunity for valid and meaningful test results. It's very difficult to do this kind of testing at home with caregivers either there or not there. The results are not what we need them to be in those cases. Frank Porcaro, Kim, Dana Manning, and Ann Uberti attended a 2-day workshop on how to develop a profile or vision of a graduate, which will enable the districts to articulate a collective vision for the attributes a student will process upon graduation. And the middle school is in the process of redoing their schedule. And they will be coming to us, to the CNI meeting on December 9th to share the details relating to the schedule, the impact it'll have on curriculum and instruction, and to possibly share with us some new course offerings that will be offered to the children. So that concludes my CNI report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Voros. And were there other? Yes, Ms. Zukowski.
There was a facility CIP finance meeting and then a follow-on with the architects. At the meeting, the architects presented a very rough estimate at what the Holly HVAC might cost, and it significantly exceeded what had been the placeholder estimate in the CIP. The architects are in the process of reviewing the plans to see if they can draft a finer grained estimate. And there may be a possibility that the Holly project will be split into phases with the focus on the 1921 building to begin with. Is Bob here?
I don't think so.
He isn't. He isn't, but I did speak with him today on that very thing. I can share if you want me to.
That would be good. Thank you.
So we did have a discussion, and what we'd like to do, I know that they talked about the phases, but I've asked to meet with Bob and Alan and the architect very soon this week so that we could actually create a plan before going to the Board of Finance, leaving the CIP the way it is right now with the estimate that we have in there, and moving just part of the plan forward, which would be as Mrs. Zukowski laid out, the 21 building and prep for the 48. And what I really want to clarify is, what does that mean? What's included and what is the timeline? What happens this summer, what happens the following summer, and so on and so forth. Because we can always add in year 3, the next part or the next phase, as we call it. And I asked him to look at what that would include as well. So what I want to do is try to finally kind of put our hands around what it is that's going to be included in each of the phases and what those timelines would look like. And that would mean we wouldn't have to change the CIP at this moment.
Okay, Good, good. Were there any other committee reports or questions for any of our committees? All right, I know that the communications committee letter went out between last meeting and this meeting, and it was good to see that going out and the community having access to that. So thank you for doing that. And I think, were there liaison activities that I'm missing? No. All right, so we'll move on to our student rep reports. So Ms. Cora, Mr. Jerfy, do you have a report for us from the high school?
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'll start off by talking about how everything has been going in school. As you guys all know, COVID cases have been rising significantly, but school staff has been doing a good job. Sanitizers and wipes are available in every room, and shields are mandatory even in the senior courtyard. And if students need to borrow a desk shield, as I did today, they can do so from the main office. I also kind of want to talk about clubs. So given the rising cases, I'm assuming that many clubs will start to meet fully virtually. One of my clubs personally has been doing this since the beginning of the school year, and it doesn't seem like anyone's really missing out on too much. And also, as we mentioned in the last meeting or the meeting before, I think, it's been a little difficult for the larger clubs to meet, like National Honor Society, for example. I talked to the president and he told me what they're currently working on. So as part of the National Honor Society, members often serve as tutors for other students. And so to help with social distancing and availability, the board is currently working towards a new tutoring platform that will allow students in town to receive the tutoring that they need. And this platform will also set a precedent for coming years. So if something like this ever needs to happen again. The NHS board is also currently developing a remote induction process for the new inductees coming in this winter. They would like to keep the tradition going and they're looking forward to it. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Clore, did you have more to add?
Yes, I will continue. So good evening, members of the Board of Ed and Superintendent Dr. Rodriguez. I know we already talked a little bit about sports earlier, but I wanted to continue and add a couple more things. So fall sports, Saturday marked the official conclusion. All 4 fall sports are over. As we mentioned, the boys soccer team had a 4-1 win against New Milford on Saturday, so they were the North SWC champions, as well as girls volleyball, who also happened to beat New Milford. So we have 2 winners this season. So with the conclusion of fall sports, everyone's head kind of turns to winter sports. And like Dr. Rodriguez mentioned, we all found out this afternoon while we were in school that they are postponing the start date to January 19th. And I think I was in school today, so I saw many students like very upset, but I think they're still holding like that glimmer of hope that their season will continue in the winter. That's what I kind of tried to cheer up my friends about. And besides winter sports, on last Wednesday, on November 11th, it was National Signing Day. So 5 of NHS seniors signed their national letters of intent to continue their academic and athletic careers at NCAA colleges and universities next fall. So Katie Goida is playing field hockey at Bryant University. Emma Magazoo is playing lacrosse at the University of New Hampshire. Caroline Mahoney will be swimming at the College of Holy Cross. Shay Murphy will be playing lacrosse at Keenshaw State University. And Jack Peterson, who was on the call before, will be playing baseball at UConn. So congrats to all of our Nighthawks for continuing on in the next 4 years. The NHS Marching Band and Guard had their final recorded performance of the season on November 7th in the Varsity US Band's grand finale. So I mentioned in a previous meeting that all of their performances this year were held at the stadium, and they recorded them and sent them in to the US Bands Conference. So November 7th was their final recorded performance, and they saw their highest scores of the season against 13 other Division II bands. So an overall score of 93.5 out of 100, which allowed them to win the bronze medal. And on top of that, Newtown also took Best Music Caption Award and the Color Guard and Percussion sections, both ranked second in the national championship. which I think is a great accomplishment. I know a lot of them, a lot of the members of the band this year still had a great season despite not being able to travel. Fall sports have ended. Band had their last performance. So with all these endings, we also see the end of quarter 1. Just like that, we are 1/4 the way through the school year. Crazy how time flies, even now. Parent-teacher conferences are being held tomorrow and Thursday since it's the end of the first quarter. So for students like Rochelle and I, that means we have early dismissal both of those days. And then last week, I mentioned Spirit Week at the high school, which has since been postponed to the week of November 30th through Friday, December 4th. And the themes have been announced, and I want to just say again that I'm encouraging all students to participate, whether they are online or in school, because I think it's especially important in these otherwise challenging times that we spread some school spirit. So I think it's great that we're still having them, and I hope that kids who are online will also participate, especially cohort D. As for the seniors, most early action and early decision deadlines have passed. So now seniors have until the regular decision deadline approaches to apply to schools. But I think most of us can agree that it's probably still a good idea to get them done as soon as possible, especially so that you can enjoy your holidays. That's my goal, and not have to worry about it anymore. And our school counselors have been great helps with this. They've continuously been sending us emails, updating us, and making sure we are all set with the application process. And then right now, it's also an important time to look for scholarships, which I think Naviance is a very good source for this, and to look, because we are sent most of them through Naviance rather than our school emails. And then as the season goes on, the temperatures outside continue to drop. So students have since stopped eating outside since it is simply too cold to enjoy your lunch from out there. Now, even more than before, it is important, like Rochelle mentioned, to bring your desk shield to school so that students can safely and comfortably enjoy their lunches inside the cafeteria. The cafeterias will have more students in them, so you must sit forward with your desk shield propped up so that we can continue to enjoy lunch in school and keep everyone safe and make sure that students still feel comfortable eating lunch. I think that we're very lucky that we're still able to have lunch in school, so we should continue to follow the guidelines in order to continue with this privilege. I personally don't mind using my shield at lunch because it gives me a good break from my mask, and then I still have plenty of time when I'm done eating to put my mask back on and stop using my shield and talk to my friends. Because I don't know, it's just plenty of time, and I think it's an easy thing to swap with, just using your desk shield. That's all I have to report on for this meeting, and I'm just really hoping and reiterating that hopefully everything remains good and safe, especially when we return from Thanksgiving break.
I think we all have that same sentiment. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or observations for high school preps?
Michelle?
Mr. Voros, yes.
I would just like to remind the students at the high school that the Newtown Scholarship Association has so many scholarships and money that they would love to be able to give to the students. So I encourage them to apply for these scholarships. I had one student years ago who applied to practically everyone she possibly could and amassed $10,000 in scholarships. So the money is there, and I would encourage the students to look over that list and apply. Thank you.
So that's a good point. Do you get notifications of scholarships that are available?
We get notifications on our Naviance account. So we got an email a couple weeks ago from Mrs. Ladowicki in the Career Center saying to make sure we check on the notifications in Naviance because it doesn't get sent directly to our school email. And I think on Naviance, there's also a link to the Newtown Scholarship Association because I looked at that website earlier.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Good reminder, Mr. Voros. Thank you. All right. More comments or questions? Thank you for your reports. that'll bring us to our financial report. I'll entertain a motion for that to get started on that discussion. We'd like to make a motion to approve the financial report.
Move that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending October 31st, 2020.
Second.
All right, so Mr., can you hear me?
Right
We
now,
can hear you.
earlier you were sort of flickering in and out.
All right, so Mr. Cruson makes the motion, Mr. Woro seconds the motion. So Ms. Bettis, would you like to take us through the financial report?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Muted, Tanya.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everybody. So tonight I'll be presenting the fourth report of the 2021 school year. And I was wondering if I could share my screen and present the report so you all can see what I'm talking about. I don't know if I need permission.
Yeah, I'll, let's see. I'm making it so that you can. Does that work? Can you share it now?
Yeah. I think I can. Okay. Oh, there we go. Great. Okay, can you see the report?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So within this report, we're providing a majority of the anticipated obligations as we've begun to forecast our expenses. The report also includes year-to-date actual expenditures and active encumbrances. Most of our accounts within the purchase property services, which includes things like repairs and building maintenance, other purchase services, which are contracted services, postage, printing, and supplies, have been forecasted as an anticipated full budget spend in order to determine an estimated full year position. Because these are projections, these balances are subject to change. During the month of October, the Board of Education spent approximately $8.8 million, $4.1 million on salaries, $2.2 on employee benefits, and about $2.5 million on all other objects. The Corona Relief Grant was recently approved by the state for use, and a revision in this grant guideline allowed us to reallocate 60% of the funding to cover salary expenses that were related to student support. The remainder of the grant was split amongst contracted services, custodial supplies, and technology equipment. This report also includes a reclassification of Board of Ed expenses to the Corona Relief Grant Fund, totaling $384,841, leaving an overall projected balance of $13,000. So I'd like to highlight a few sub-accounts, if I can get this page to move. Okay, here we go. So the overall salary account is showing a positive balance. Get to the bottom of that. And this is primarily due to two factors. One, we still have quite a few open positions in the Para-Educator Union, and this is producing a balance of over $300,000. And two, the Corona Relief Grant provided funding in the amount of $238,494, which makes up 98% of this balance. You can still see that we're experiencing a negative balance in the certified salaries of $332,527, as it's still proving difficult to achieve the budgeted turnover number. Now, without this Corona Relief Grant funding, our total balance in salaries would have been $3,900. So we were grateful for that reallocation. In employee benefits, we're still experiencing a higher than usual unemployment cost. However, they are beginning to decrease. But based on our year-to-date expenses and anticipated obligations, our full year estimate remains negative at this time, showing a negative balance of almost $60,000. And we'll continue to monitor the incoming claims and activity within this account. Moving on to purchase services. In this area, we've anticipated a full budget spend, leaving a positive balance of $64,000. And in purchase services, I'd like to point out that in contracted services, we are beginning to experience some pressure, and this is primarily due to the lunch program. You can see a negative balance right here of $104,000. So this isn't new to any of the other districts in the state. Everybody is feeling this pressure right now. Our lunch sales from the program have declined drastically, and we still have our fixed costs to deal with. Oops, sorry about that. So when you compare our last year a la carte sales, we've dropped over 90% in sales, and this is the biggest part of our revenue, which covers most of our expenses in this program. The reason that we're seeing most of these drops is obviously because of the hybrid model, and this model inherently causes lower enrollment. And then you couple this with the overall less participation, and we see this large deficit here. This program will have to be subsidized by the board at some point. The high school is now in the National School Lunch Program, which began November 1st. And what this means is it will now receive federal reimbursement, but it will also be eligible for the free lunch and breakfast program through the state's Seamless Summer Option. This program will run through June. Having the high school in the National Lunch Program will slightly mitigate some of the expenses. However, again, this is an area of concern that we will be discussing in more detail during our next Finance Subcommittee meeting. In transportation and out-of-district tuition, you do see a positive balance, as we are still currently using the projected grant to offset those costs at this time. As I mentioned last month, in November, we will be adjusting the excess cost grant, and this will give us a more realistic view of these accounts. Moving on to supplies, we have an overall negative balance of $21,000. The main driver here, it's no surprise, is all the additional cleaning and PPE supplies that we've purchased during this pandemic. The grant did supply, we allocated a small portion of that to the grant, but we still are over budget in supplies by approximately $254,000. But the good news in our supply account is that we now feel that we have enough data to forecast our virtual net metering account at the high school. So you'll notice here we have a positive balance of $190,000 in energy. This may prove to be higher as we collect more data in the months to come. And at some point, 5 more schools will be coming online. And once we have that data, we'll present it to the board. Moving on to the last page of the report. In equipment, we are still seeing a large deficit, and actually this number has doubled over the prior month. And this is due to the necessary supplementation for expansion of our distance learning needs and devices and equipment. But at this point, we now feel that we do have enough devices to cover the district and for educators that are out. So we don't foresee any bulk orders coming in at this time. And down below here, we have the excess cost revenue. You can see the budgeted amount. I did adjust this by 10% to just try to come in line with some of the credits and offsets that we're currently seeing in out-of-district transportation. And below that, we do have some other miscellaneous revenue and local tuition that has come in for the month of October. And other than that, we had 2 emergency repairs for the month. One at Head Meadow, which required a 100-foot expansion joint repair on the roof. This resulted in a cost of $7,682. And at Hawley, there were some repairs required to 3 HVAC rooftop units in the 97 wing. And they required miscellaneous components, pulleys, blower motors, things like that. The total cost was just over $11,000. And both of those vendors are on the U.S. Commodities Purchasing Program, therefore the quotes were not required. And that's all I have for the report. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'll try to.
All right, thank you.
Okay, think it's off. I know that's a lot to digest. There's really a lot going on this month, and I have to say there's so many moving pieces. You know, just with the COVID, the hybrid models, the lunch program, budgeting season, there's a lot going on right now.
All right, is everybody seeing Tanya's screen still? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you are. What's that? Okay. I'm back. I'm getting new to this technology. I'm getting used to it.
I know. Well, it works pretty well most of the time. I'm amazed at how much we can do this way. All right, thank you. You're welcome. That is helpful. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Ms. Zukowski.
So the form of this this readout is getting more and more understandable, I think.
Okay.
When you say anticipated obligations, that column includes things both that were budgeted and that have arisen since the time we budgeted. Is that correct?
Yes, it does include items that were budgeted, but in some cases, as in the lunch program, which was not budgeted or foreseen, those costs are in there as well. So it's anything that we anticipate or forecast, we'll put in that column. So that paints a realistic view of the bottom line.
I have 2 more questions, but I can hold off for others.
Does anybody else have questions? No? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Zukowski.
So the technology is coming in at over $600,000 beyond what we budgeted. Are there ideas on how we might cover that expense?
Well, we still have some funding from the capital non-reoccurring that we haven't tapped into yet. We're going to be looking at using that sometime November and December. So, you know, and we also have more funding on the town side if required.
Okay, and then the final question in terms of alternate revenue, would it make sense to include in that table things like the coronavirus relief grant and signify where portions of that money were actually applied to?
Well, I do have that on our, what I call my COVID report that I could share with the subcommittee. It is all identified by account and expense area. You know, on this report, if you'd like to see that revenue listed with the other revenue, we could certainly do that. You know, I did earmark and I did put in the financial summary where most of that was being expensed. Most of it was in the salaries. So we could put it on here, or we could just save it, you know, and leave it on the COVID expense sheet that I have for you.
My request is if we just leave it on the COVID expense sheet, that we put a little asterisk by revenues to call out that the COVID specific revenues are available in finer detail elsewhere.
Okay. Could do that.
Does that sound?
I mean, if it makes sense, yes.
Like a reasonable plan?
I could footnote this report, the financial summary, so that we see we did have a revenue offset for that grant, correct? And then we'll have the detail elsewhere. Yep.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Voros?
Michelle,
Yeah.
Tanya, you gave a number for paraprofessionals. That was 300,000. Is that money that we haven't spent or money we have spent?
That's money we haven't spent, but one thing I just want to caution about that balance is we typically do have some forecasting in that area. We haven't done that yet. We're still hiring paraprofessionals, so that number is going to come down. We have about 10 positions open, which is, if they were all hired today, we would probably spend about $280,000 of that.
Good. All right, good. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, sensing none, let's vote on the financial report to accept or reject. All those in favor of accepting the report as presented? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? None, so that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our presentations. So we have our guests here this evening. Ms. Swift, I think, is going to present both of these curricula to us. She presented to the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, and we welcome you to the Board of Ed meeting to present to our remaining board members. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all that you're doing during the pandemic and also maintaining the focus on curriculum and instruction, because that is why we're here. You spend so much time on the masks and the shields, which are important and allow us to do this other work. But it is nice to focus on the purpose of schools. And as you know, I'm here for Abby Marks. And as anybody who's ever substituted for Abby knows, I'm no Abby. But I am happy to share two of the recent curricula from our senior elective program. And Dr. Longabuco is going to share the slides, I believe, and I will talk through them and then answer any questions that people have.
Perfect. Give me 1 second.
So the courses that I'm here to talk about are Women's Studies and World Literature, which are 2 of the 11 electives that we offer in the senior year, and they are semester courses. So between the 2 of them, one has 3 units and one has 2 units, and that is to adjust for the amount of time. So when we started, we had some revision goals in mind. And so if you wanted to, and so we wanted to continue those that had the concept-based units and to create those that didn't, while maintaining the rich senior elective program. We built on the scope and sequence that the 9 through 11 program is built on, and we made sure that they aligned with the Connecticut core standards. We also pride ourselves on maintaining the flexibility of texts, both for the teachers' academic rigor and choice, and also the students. And we also are aware that we are increasing cultural representation. We believe in the senior elective program because it allows the development of interests while honing the language arts skills. And it also prepares them for college by starting to make the choices based on interest and their need of skills, that self-assessment that is so important. So these 2 courses have been around and have changed. Women's Studies, I can't tell you exactly when that went into place, but I can tell you that World Literature has evolved from British and World Literature. And that really has been the focus of giving it a wider scope and a more global scope as well. And those are the course descriptions that appear in the course studies program. So we'll start with Women's Studies, which is traditionally taught by Kristen English as the anchor teacher, and then sometimes when there are more sections, other teachers will teach it as well. And the first one is on the cultural construct. So they look at cultural identity. The skills or the process skills that they look at in the units are overlapping because they are important skills, and because they only have a semester, they're going to work on close reading, analysis, and discussion, critical skills wherever you're going in life. And the knowledge is identity, feminism, and gender, and they end their unit with an extended essay. This is also the unit where they would get support in the college essay. All the senior electives put that in as support for the students. In the second unit, they look at race, identity, and gender. And they look also, if you look at the knowledge base, they not only consider race, but sexual orientation, and then the intersectionality of those concepts. And their summative assessment now is narrative writing. And then we look at the third unit in how media and the effect on women and gender. And so they are really looking at both the media and sexual assault and harassment and assault and body image and the effect that it has on women. And then they do an analysis of media and advertisements in particular. And then we have world literature that Mrs. Kaplan is traditionally the teacher of, and really has broadened the scope, as I mentioned before, getting this to a global program. And so they start with the purpose of language, which anybody who studies English is excited by, and looks at the evolution of language and how it evolves and what was the purpose. And you'll notice that the process skills also have close reading and analysis. She breaks it down into cultural and structural, but you can see the overlap with women's studies. So we're making sure that whatever the students select, there is an overlap and they go to school prepared with the skills that they need. And she infuses the program not only with the literature, but there's culture and art, and looking at the role of translation as from some of the older texts. And as the first one in women's studies did an essay, this one also does an analytical essay for their unit, and they also get support in their college essay. And then her second unit looks at more modern and post-colonialism literature. And one of the key highlights on this one, besides looking at the various periods in literature, but they get to select a culture that they want to study. So there's a lot of self-investment in those, and also looking at the graphic novel as a viable source of information, and then they create their personal comic project, as well as doing a more traditional essay with research in it as well. So if you have questions on the curriculum, I will do my best to answer them.
Do you have any board member questions? No, three of us have already heard the presentation. I can't recall whether, in any event, are there any other board members who would like to ask questions about the curriculum? No? All right. Thank you so much for joining us to share the curricula with us. Mr. Voros, did you have something you wanted to add?
I wanted to thank Kathy again. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing both of these curricula with us. And and you're a great stand-in for Mrs. Marks.
Thank you.
We appreciate your being here with us.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right, so like as usual, if there are any questions between this meeting and our next meeting about the curricula, if you could just forward those on so that we have a sense of whether there's something that needs to be addressed before we take action on this curricula, that would be great. All right, so that'll bring us to our old business, and our old business is the COVID-19 update, which I wish we could take that off of our old business at this point, but here it is.
So as you all know, it's no surprise we have had multiple cases across the district, and that has impacted classrooms and staffing. However, on Monday, we will at least get back to hybrid for our K-6 with a very short span before Thanksgiving break. I've spoken with the principals of Middlegate, Newtown High School, Newtown Middle School. Tomorrow during our administrative team, we're going to have a discussion on it as well. In reviewing our staffing needs, Suzanne Duramo has been a big help as well. And unless something changes, we're fully hybrid on Monday. And I know that's difficult, but at least there's a connection. I think the greatest part about the hybrid is that there still is connection with teachers and classrooms. I did send a communication, as you talked about that, Dr. Koo, to all of our families to let them know that if we had to make a sudden change or a change in our decision, I would give them the time. We did just finish at Middlegate, as a matter of fact, hand distributing more devices. We want to make sure that every student has one. And if we, do have to go remote at some point in the future, or even through our hybrid, making sure that every student has what they need. Right now, those who must quarantine, we're doing the right things, including our teachers are working remotely with their students, which is what would be happening during remote anyway. Again, the biggest challenge that most schools are seeing is not spread, it is the staffing. And so we know when we get to a certain point, I think someone, I met with the teacher forum just the other day, we had a good discussion about it. That is our biggest challenge. So, I was actually at Middlegate this morning because they had several classrooms that were impacted. And it went well. Dr. Gambos went over in the morning to help out, and they actually met with the teachers. I met with Chris Geisler and John Sullivan, who's the union rep and also the AP there, later in the day, because it was at that point we were going to make a decision. All right, how did it go? What do you need? How far is it impacting you? And they're good. They're good right now. Again, we're taking this day by day. That's all you can do is make a decision based on that. So that's where we are today. As I said to Dr. Longabuco earlier tonight, I mean, it is something that we talk about, and as well, to make the right decision. Look, it's good for kids when they're in school. That's my feeling, and I think based on a lot of my emails, many people feel the same. Hybrid is that's even difficult for parents. They want students in school. So we have to be fair, though, reasonable, and we have to make sure people are safe and the well-being of our families and students and our staff. So we are also tomorrow during my admin meeting. I am going to make a point of reminding principals to remind their staff, that they should be using all the mitigation strategies. I know it's very difficult when you're in class. It's much easier when there's 50% of the population as opposed to 100%. That was one of the reasons why I'm glad we did stay on hybrid, because it does help. One of the things that hybrid does do very well, as opposed to being all in, is certainly it saves you from how many people you have to quarantine because some students haven't been in class for a while. So that does help a lot. But again, districts are making their own decisions in a variety of ways. I just talked to 3 of my closest colleagues in the area who are in the same approach we're taking. But again, the biggest impact will be staffing for sure. So we are hiring more subs by the day. Again, we are allowing our staff, there are some districts that chose not to do that, but I think the greatest service to our community has been allowing our staff to work with our students online. So that has been a big help. So that's where we are. And, you know, after I meet with my administrative team tomorrow, again, right before the holiday, we hope we get to Thanksgiving. And again, there's a longer, you know, a much longer stint between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we'll see what it looks like at that point. And again, as I said to the parents, we have to make the decisions we make, even though they impact our families. And I know that's not easy for families, especially if we go fully remote. That's probably going to be the hardest.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Comments? I'll just, oh, Mr. Voros, did you have something?
Lori, I'm a bit confused on if a child is taken to the pediatrician or the doctor, whatever, and they're being tested. What is the protocol? Are those children then they go back to school while they wait for test results?
No. No. So John, if again, that definitely is related to the I mean, once let's say they take ill or they have the temperature or even something not even to that level, if the parent either pulls them out or the nurse suggests that a student is ill and must be picked up, or a parent calls in and says, I'm bringing my child to the doctor, it really is at that point in the doctor's hands as to whether or not, in most cases they will test, but in some cases they will, knowing the child's history, they might not. And that's happened in rare cases as well. So it really is up to the medical professional about that. But if there is a suspicion of that, then the doctor will say the child needs to be tested, and they are not to come back to school until they have a negative test. So that would be the recommendation by the medical professional, the school nurse, or our local director of health as well.
So are all those protocols stated somewhere so that the parents know, the doctors know, and the principals know what the procedure is for all of this?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, the medical doctors certainly know that. I mean, we've been dealing with that from the onset. And our school nurses absolutely know all of the protocols, as certainly, you know, our local director of health, and they make the recommendations as they talk to families. Ann Dalton has also done an extraordinary job. She has sent out reminders to families. Every letter I've sent out that I've communicated, if you click on any one of the links, it gives additional reminders to families. And I know, unfortunately, you know, we send the same letter, even though it has the same information, because you might not read it every time. And the one time you really want it, you have it, which is why we've been very consistent in sending that letter. So yes, there it is. There's plenty of reminders, Mr. Voros, on the protocols.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Zukowski, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to follow up on something that John had brought up. So if a student is visibly ill in school and is going to be isolated and then taken home and taken to the doctor, in the protocol, just to be clear, are the siblings of that student also requested to go home on that date also?
Not until often what they'll do is first find out, if the child is truly sick and will have a test. If there is, they're not really asked to quarantine unless there is truly a positive case in the family.
Any other questions or comments? I will bring up another question. So I know that initially when we brought school back in the fall, there were some guidelines that the Department of Public Health gave out, and it has become more of a continuum rather than a set point of like, this is where you need to go to hybrid, this is where you need to go to, it's become more of a continuum. And even more recently, they've started talking more about the incidence of transmission in the schools. So I guess my question to you is, do we know if there has been transmission within the Newtown school settings? Yeah.
So I can say an absolute no to that. I had Ann Dalton go back. We went back through every quarantined, and that's how you can tell everyone where all the positive cases and everyone from those positive cases who were also quarantined. That's where you know transmission from student to student or adult to student or student to adult. In not one case was there transmission in any of those cases. These are all singleton cases coming in from, and we can trace them back, sadly. So I'm glad what you said early on about the community. We can trace them to a sleepover party or a gathering of some sort, or an adult on a sports team. And again, all of that, they were all single cases and then were known, enough time, either we got them early enough and they didn't come to school, or they were in school and we had them leave. But that says a lot. I can tell you so much more is known about this virus, and in my own personal life, I've got a huge medical family and actually a neighbor who works in the infectious disease at Danbury, and we know so much more about the virus that we didn't know before, and that has certainly changed the way we are, the medical professionals are even approaching treatment and all of that. So that's the good news part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of make clear that we're talking about there are classes that are out or there's staffing issues at the schools. It's not because there's transmission that's happening within the schools. It's rather people who are being quarantined as a precaution and making sure that there is not transmission in the schools. Is that?
If they've gone out and they've come back, that's what's happening. We're quarantining lots of adults and students. They meet their quarantine, they come back, and more people go out. It's just unfortunate. That's what we're seeing. If there were a transmission and a spread, we would see it through from staff to student, student to student, that kind of thing. But we went back from the very beginning and there has not been any. And we're not, Newtown that's not new to Newtown. Every superintendent who has spoken, and we speak weekly with our local health departments, are saying the same thing. It's really the staffing issue that's going to hurt. And that's why you're seeing shutdown. They have no choice.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on our old business COVID update? I'll be so glad when that's no longer old business. But for the moment, here we are. So that'll bring us to our discussion and possible action on the diversity compliance coordinator. I think we can.
I move that the Board of Education approve the diversity compliance coordinator.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Crisson makes a motion and Ms. Herman Stites seconds the motion. And Dr. Rodriguez, did you want to speak further to this?
Sure. So you have all had an opportunity to review it, and I gave you a working draft, and I added in some components as well on their work with policy and procedures and or practices and protocols. Suzanne Duramo and I looked at equitable salaries for a 10-month only position with some summer work as well. We landed on a position that would likely cost around 60 to 65,000. And this would be in alignment with a similar position in the district that I raised two meetings ago. The position who works with our most highly impacted families, but also we looked at other similar positions outside of our school district, in other districts, and even outside of public education and organizations. I imagine that we would not get this off the ground, as I said, for a few months this year. So that would be prorated. I don't even think it would be half that. I think it would be even less. But I still firmly believe it's important to establish it this year, to establish a connection with the school community, and to be able to build this position from the ground floor. And it makes, I think, something that is truly and appropriately going to support our students and families. I mentioned Recenter in working with us, especially around this position as well. I think that will be important because one of the things is recruitment. They want us to understand the role, to be able to shape it with clarity, and then really look at the recruiting efforts that go along with this role. And they figure that that was more important than anything else, is who we hire, how we hire, and who's involved in the hiring process so that people feel they have input. So getting back to the cost, I anticipate we would only need to spend half that, and that's high, $30,000 maybe for half the year, and it most likely will be even less than that. We have, as you heard, some savings from late hires and unfilled positions. So I do anticipate we will have the funds for that at least this year. Again, we will have to move it forward to the budget, but we will also have some time with the position to get it off the ground. I do plan, I think as Mrs. Lideline mentioned, I thought it was a great idea to see if others on the town side might be interested in, this is for the future, in sharing use of that position. I just have not had a chance yet to meet with the first selectman, but I will, because I think that was a very good suggestion.
All right. Are there any questions or comments about this? Yes, Ms. Dukowski?
I'd like to understand more rigorously what the trade-offs would be between hiring the person this year and hiring for the beginning of the school year in July, especially since things are so disrupted right now with COVID and everything going on. So if you could help, shed a little bit more light on the trade-offs.
Well, that's an excellent question, by the way. We've gone back and forth a couple of times about waiting or not, which is why I said I don't even know if we will have a half a year. We might hire a little bit later than we anticipate. But I think the trade-offs are, there's a great momentum right now in and among our members of our peak. And with Recenter coming in to work with that group and us, the suggestion was it really would be great to get this position in place so that the community feels supported now. There are a lot of families even now that I'm speaking to that really want to see us do the right thing. We've had discussions, COVID, these discussions, to be honest, happened a year before any of this. And so COVID stopped everything in its tracks already. And I think that, you know, I anticipate that if we do the right thing and we shape the position and we look at recruiting efforts with their support, again, I can't say that we will absolutely find, we may be waiting till next year, we may. But I would like to at least make the effort because I think it would be very helpful to the district in more ways than one if we can get it off the ground. And I think a lot of it, Mrs. Zukowski, is building the position, learning about the community. And I think that goes a long way in advance of coming into a position and starting there. Because that takes a while. That takes months all by itself. And so I really hope that we could find someone that can come on board at least to start the ball rolling.
Ms. Weidline?
Yeah, one of the things, Lori, that I think I heard you allude to, which I really like about starting to look now or in the very near future, is that you have the time to find the right person. So if you go to start now and the right person just isn't there, you still have time. Whereas if you wait, it kind of puts a time crunch on things. And then sometimes you make a difficult choice that you don't necessarily want to make because the right person isn't in front of you. So I do like the fact that starting now gives you more time, like you talked about with recruitment, and getting an understanding of the person and how they would fit into the Newtown community and what benefits they would have to add. So I really like that aspect of it because it is a critical position.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Zukowski?
So when last we spoke, we talked about the policy. There was a discussion about, is this a role or is this a position? And we had talked about finding maybe someone within the staff to further flesh out, you know, what the position would be and to start, for lack of a better word, to start socializing our families with the idea that there would be this type of position there for them to leverage when they needed. So, and in terms of starting now versus starting later, we've got the holidays coming up. And if we were to hire for, say, January 1st, I mean, the time to start looking there would be March. So we're effectively saying there's a 3-month difference in terms of looking to hire. So again, we had talked about looking for somebody inside to sort of put the glove on and see how it would, and learn more about the position by actually doing. And it seems like that would in and of itself bring good knowledge.
So we did, and you're right, in what we spoke about. I did start to put feelers out and talk to multiple internal, what I thought would be possible candidates that might be interested. And, you know, they have to have a certain background as well. And talk to administrators, talk to staff, and even some on the teachers union. And the thing that, and also members of Peak. And the thing that became very clear to me was, as well as in talking to the outside organizations that I referred to, what became very clear is that this is a very special role, and that while there may always be someone internal, this was more important to start to look outward, outside of the district for a lot of reasons. You know, things that we don't think of, like just bias, people that have been associated with the district in multiple ways. And even though it might not actually exist within that person, families might feel that way. And I heard that from multiple families and from very clearly from staff. I was very surprised that even our own staff felt that way and could see kind of through the trees to understand that this was such an important role. They felt it was better, it would better serve the community to look on the outside. So that is why I think we sort of changed. I mean, I really reflected on that. I don't, come to these decisions lightly, but hearing it from that many, I felt that was a smart approach to take.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Harriman Stites?
Yes, I'm in full support of moving forward with this position now. I really agree with Ms. Leidline's point about taking the time to make sure that we hire the right person for the job and not be under the time crunch at the beginning of the year. It is a critical position. I've been involved in those conversations on the peak subgroup. The folks involved there see that this is a critical position to move our district forward in the way that we're looking to do so. And I just don't, if there is funding available in our staffing line to give the superintendent flexibility to start looking for that position now, I think would make a huge impact. Even given the disruptions that we're facing with COVID, I just think it's too important to wait. And I think moving forward is what's best for our district right now.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, sensing none, let's vote on the motion to approve the diversity compliance coordinator. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our second read and possible action on the grade 10 Algebra 1 Foundations 2 curriculum.
I move that the Board of Education approve the grade 10 Algebra 1 Foundations 2 curriculum.
Second.
Right. So Mr. Cruson makes the motion, Mr. Voro seconds it. Are there any other comments or questions before we vote on that? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, that passes unanimously. And that'll bring us to our grade.
I move that the Board of Education approve the grade 3 Algebra 1 Foundations 3 curriculum.
Grade 11, Algebra.
Grade 11 Algebra 1 Foundations 3, that's what I have written down.
Okay. Mr. Cruson makes the motion, Mr. Voro seconds. Any questions or comments on this before we vote? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our second read and possible action on policy 4118.
Yeah, just let me do it. It's a long one. I move that the Board of Education approve policy 4118.237/4218.237/5141.8 face masks and coverings.
Second.
All right, so Mr. Cruson makes the motion, Ms. Harriman Stites seconds the motion. And were there any questions that you received?
Yes, there was a question, I believe it was brought up at the last meeting and then put forward to the committee. It is, you'll see the only change that we made since your last read is on page A, and then actually that change carries through to the regulation on the first page of the regulation as well. It's in the red, it says certain activities and athletics. In the optional language that is bolded. I think a board member brought forward a good point to make sure that we are being inclusive in marching band and other such activities that may be exempt from mask wearing in certain circumstances. So we made that small change and we think that addresses that issue.
And we did get input from from the lawyers on it. Yeah.
Right. yeah, they felt that that change would be acceptable and would be in keeping with the intent of the policy and the law around it.
Okay. So are there any questions or comments before we go forward with this? All right. Sensing none, we'll vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. That passes unanimously. And that brings us to our new business, discussion and possible action on the 2021 schedule of Board of Education meetings. So we have, that should be in your board packet, the proposed schedule. You'll notice that we don't have location.
Do you want the motion before you start?
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2021 schedule of Board of Education meetings.
All right. Mr. Crusoe makes the motion and somebody will second it. Maybe? Nobody wants to second that motion?
Second. Second.
All right. Well, Mr. Harriman Stites seconds the motion.
Okay.
So just, yeah, I was just noting that the location will be determined. It's normally, or in the past, we've indicated that it would be in council chambers. It is challenging having these hybrid type meetings in council chambers just because of the technology. But, and I believe that Ms. Gabriel has set it up so we can do it at Reed very easily. So yes.
We've got it set up.
Thank you. So eventually we'll get to try that, but so what you have is the schedule of dates, and then the location will be determined as we get there, and depending on COVID and where we are in the scheme of things. So are there any questions or comments on this schedule? Yes, Ms. Zukowski?
Yeah, so I'm wondering why we only have one meeting scheduled for September. I mean, one of the things that could, if we have the meeting in September, we could further spread out all of the agenda items that make our meetings so long. It would seem that that would be one way of maybe slightly alleviating the length of the meetings that we have, while still allowing us to have informed discussion on business before the board.
Anybody have thoughts on meetings in September?
I'm trying to look at the calendar right now, but I think that, oh no, I guess there is another Tuesday in the middle. So we'd have to move the 14th to the 21st and then do the 7th, which is the day after Labor Day and Rosh Hashanah. Otherwise, we'd end up with two meetings. We'd end up with 2 meetings in 2 weeks. We'd have to do 2 back to back.
Right. Okay. Ms. Lideline, do you have a comment?
Well, I just seem to remember that in a lot of cases there was conflicts with meetings like open houses at the beginning of the school year that made it challenging. The fact that teachers were getting ready for back to school as well as administrators. It seemed to be very challenging to have the 2 meetings in September. So that was, I think, one of the reasons why we shortened it to just 1. So I think that was just something that came to mind.
My guess is, looking at this schedule, it's still going to conflict with Newtown's open house schedule, but that was always my complaint, but that was just me.
Well,
so I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah.
That we change the dates in September to be Tuesday the 7th and Tuesday, the 21st.
Okay, so Ms. Zukowski makes the motion to change the dates in September to the 7th and 21st.
I'll second it.
And Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. Is there any, do we need further discussion on that?
Is there an issue with the fact that the board meeting would be on Rosh Hashanah, which I don't know if that's a closed day or not for the schools, but is that a day off from the school? Is that a day the schools are off?
Then I can amend my motion to be Wednesday, the 8th, to accommodate Rosh Hashanah, as well as Tuesday, the 21st.
Since I seconded that, if I need to approve that amendment, I'm okay with it.
Okay, so the motion now will be, let's see, that we changed the dates to Wednesday, September 8th and Tuesday, September 21st instead of September 14th, right? Okay. Any further discussion on that before we vote on the amendment?
On the amendment.
All right, so all those in favor of the amendment to change the dates in September? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
All right, so we have 4 in favor. That would be Mr. Cruson, myself, Ms. Zukowski, and Ms. Harriman Stites, and 2 opposed, Ms. Leidline and Mr. Voros. So the motion passes. So the amendment, so now we have a calendar that's amended with 2 dates in September. Is there any further discussion or changes to the calendar as presented? All right, all those in favor of the calendar as amended? Aye. And any opposed to the calendar as amended? All right.
Opposed.
So Ms. Leidline and Mr. Voros opposed, and again, in favor would be Mr. Cruson, myself, Ms. Zukowski, and Ms. Harriman Stites. So the calendar passes with the amendment. And clearly, there are often times when we change plans based on pandemics and changes in school schedules, but that's the plan for now. Okay, so what does that bring us to?
Minutes.
Thank you.
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of November 4th, 2020.
I second.
All right, Mr. Cruson makes the motion. Ms. Zukowski seconds the motion to approve the minutes. Are there any discussions, comments on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. And abstentions? Ms. Harriman Stites. So that passes with 1 abstention from Ms. Harriman Stites. And that brings us to our second public participation. If there's anybody on the phone who would like to address the board at this time in our second public participation, I just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And you are welcome to unmute yourself using *6 and address the board at this time. And I'm sensing no public comment. So we will move